Hi, welcome everyone. I am Beth Sandefur of Beth Sandefur Events. I am an event planner and fundraising strategist based here in Northern California, but I work with clients all over the country to plan and execute fundraising events. Those are usually in person, but these days it's a fully virtual experience. I am joined today by my longtime friend and colleague, Tom Durante of the Lux Productions. Tom, do you want to say a little bit about the Lux?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you for being here today. We're in our studios in Sonoma, California, and excited to have you here and excited to, dive into all the things that we've kind of done together over the last few months and also what can potentially happen. A little bit about Lux. We're a 20-year-old event production company. We specialize in lighting, video, sound, design, and decor. And, you used to say we were a live event production company, and now we just say we're an event production company because so much has changed over the last few months. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of get into it with you today and see what journey this takes us on.
Yeah, I have to say it's a little weird for me because I'm here in this studio often, as you know, because I've actually claimed a desk space. But I'm
In
usually
both locations,
in
you
both,
have a
yes, a
desk
desk
space.
space in
Yep.
both locations. But I'm usually in the control room, and the other, I'm never out on the set in front of the cameras. So it's a little weird for
This
me.
is new for me as well. I'm normally in the other room as well with you, kind of helping everybody on this side,
Right?
but it's
Which
fun.
is part of why we decided to make this a happy hour so that we could just ease things a little bit with a little liquid
Absolutely.
courage. So,
Absolutely.
what are we drinking today, Tom?
I'm drinking bourbon today. And you?
It'll be bourbon. I'm
It'll
gonna
be bourbon.
have
All right.
actually this Middleton, very rare. It's an
Okay.
Irish whiskey. I smuggled it back from Ireland last summer in my suitcase.
I'm just having I have Bullet 10 kind of standard
house bourbon.
house
Yeah.
bourbon for my house. But
All right.
and everybody, please, pour yourself something and come on this journey with us.
All right. Well, cheers to you
Cheers, salute,
to
thank
sort of
you.
kick things off.
Yep.
So the reason we're not here just so that we can drink. I've been teaching webinars all year long, or since May, and I wanted to sort of end the year with something that kind of recapped what has been happening and what it's going to look like in spring of 2021. But I did want to do something a little bit different. So that's why we're here in the studio. And I also particularly wanted to have you on because I want to pull back the curtain a little bit on the production process and why we make certain decisions, like things that we've seen really work well from a production standpoint, specifically for fundraising events, and also talk about what may or may not be happening
In the future.
in the spring.
Future.
Yeah, get our crystal balls out.
Yeah. Right.
So before we get into some of that stuff, I do just want to touch on like what an insane year this has been. So I actually counted, and since the pandemic has begun, I've done 50 fundraising events. 45 had some kind of live stream element. 33 of those were with you
Lux.
guys,
Awesome.
which is great. Yeah. But I mean, and Lux has done over
Just over 60,
Right.
between all the different virtual events we've done, 90-something% of those being in nonprofits with a couple of other corporates and graduations
Yeah.
mixed in, but
Yeah.
almost exclusively nonprofits.
Yeah, so we've been, I mean, I think it's fair to say, fairly successful this year, where some of our colleagues have not had as much success. And I just don't want to go into this whole thing with like super glossy over of like, oh, like things have been great because like March I remember, I mean, I think my entire March and April calendar cleared out in the space of about a week and a half, like to the point I didn't even want to answer the phone anymore because every phone call was a cancellation. And I was just kind of like on my couch with a bag of Doritos crying, like not sure how I was going to
Well,
pay
sure.
my bills.
I mean, both of us being
Yeah.
business owners, employing staff, whether they be contractors or full-time employees, you care about those people and,
Yep.
and you care about your own livelihoods and you care about the livelihoods of others. So I think it was really important. I mean, you and I talked in early April. I mean, we
I think it
kept
was
seeing.
March
I mean, well, we
even.
started.
Yeah.
I think we started talking in March, but I think by early April, we're like, okay, we got to figure something else out.
Right.
Yeah, like it's just getting more closures and more cancellations and more postponements and more question marks were
Yeah.
starting to come in. Because at that point, we were still only talking about 2 to 3 months maybe of cancellations.
Right, by the fall it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, I mean, you were great to work with. And it's like, okay, how are we going to do whatever is next? What does that look like? And how can it be mutually beneficial for everybody involved?
Yeah, and so much of my client base, I mean, I work exclusively with nonprofits. So it was not only like, how do I keep my own company alive, but like all of my clients, like nonprofits still needed to raise money,
Right.
but they couldn't stop raising money. So we had to figure some stuff out. You were great. I mean, you were my longtime AV partner anyway, so it was a natural, thing that happened. But then so as we got going, I feel like this year, there was the initial, I know we don't like the pivot word, but it was the initial pivot, right? And we started figuring things out. But then we also had to constantly adapt as the year went along. I mean, in Northern California, it's a very real thing of, oh, PG&E might turn off our power one day, because it's a high wind experience.
Yeah.
And like, are there generators in the parking lot? Like, what do we do about that? And, internet infrastructure had to, across the country, not just for live streaming events, but like, it was a lot of infrastructure stuff that had to adapt. And I feel like it wasn't like one pivot. It was like this constant adaptation of, okay, what is the environment right now and how do we figure out? And
yeah, I don't use the word pivot. It's just
Right.
not in my dictionary for this particular circumstance. I love adapt only because we're constantly adapting to conditions in events. Be it fires that we've had over the last few years, be it PG&E, be it, sometimes even the best laid plans, stoves go out and electricity goes off and things like that. And it's about adapting. And for us, it was actually a pretty easy adaptation. I mean, the difficulty was, of course, losing that breadth of events.
Right.
We would normally do 250 to 300 events a year, and we're talking about 60. So it's difficult to lose that breadth of events and the staffing that, that had to be
Hard
either
choices.
furloughed and let go and things like that. But really, we've always done versions of this.
Right.
We've always live
Well, we're in
streamed.
show business too.
Well, even
We
live
always
streamed. We've live streamed corporate clients for years.
Yeah.
But adapting that technology to the nonprofit sector, I think, was really where we started to shine and say, okay, we still can do this and we still can fundraise for our clients. This is what it could look like.
Right. So let's talk then about some of the, I feel like you and I, there's certain conversations that come up all the time, because by the time I got to my 33rd live stream event, it was that client's first event, right? And I actually had 37 new clients this year. So there was this constant grind of it was everybody's first event all the time because these are so different. And there were certain, I know you've talked about, I've heard the staff impersonate you, like they can do your spiel, because you have to give the speech so many times, right? The same thing. So let's talk about some of those common conversations that we keep having and why we make certain decisions. So streaming platforms.
Yeah.
We tend to prefer either YouTube or Vimeo. But people ask us about Facebook Live and Twitch and Zoom comes up. And when someone comes to you and asks, what platform should we be streaming our event to? How do you typically respond?
Yeah, streaming platform really has to be an individual decision by the organization, in my opinion, because really what we want to do is we want to find the easiest platform for your audience to get to. Because in the end, it's about viewership.
Right.
It's about raising money.
Right.
So whatever that platform is, that's the platform we want to use. With the caveat of we also want to have high production value, because what we're missing in the live events is that interpersonal, being all in a room together. So we have to find new ways to kind of create that energy. And to me, the best way to do that is a high quality broadcast. Going back to, why YouTube, why Vimeo, why Facebook, I think the biggest challenge in all of those is the latency issue that we've, seen in the auction platforms versus the streaming platforms.
Right.
And why we like YouTube so much is we can get that latency down to 6 to 8 seconds as opposed to, say, 30 seconds for a Facebook.
I also like YouTube because one of the things I hear from my nonprofit clients so much is we have an older donor base and we're worried about, are they going to be able to handle online bidding? Are they going to be able to live streaming? And there's such a low bar for entry on YouTube because a lot of people know how to you found us on YouTube today. A lot of people,
There they are.
know how to find a YouTube. There's apps on TVs that you can watch it on your TV instead of having to be around a computer. Like that's another, but there's pros and cons to every platform. And I think that it is a lot about like, what is right? What are the objectives that you have for your event? Like, where is your audience base and how do you like meet your audience where they are?
Yeah, where is
Right.
your audience base? What are they used to? And also, how do you want them to view it?
True.
Another reason I like YouTube is it's on every smart TV. It's on your Roku, your Apple, it's readily available to view on a larger screen. So that again, when you're making all this dynamic content for your broadcast, your fund and need video, your auction slideshows, your auctioneer even, it's larger. And so it really can engage the audience rather than people watching it on their laptop or their smartphone, which of course people can do because it's available across all devices.
Right.
I like to encourage people to try to use their larger screen monitors.
For sure. So to that, I guess a segue would be, how do you feel about or what, there's been a lot of change in the auction software world since this all began. Like online bidding is not new. That's been around for forever, but people weren't using it for their live auction and for their funding need. It was kind of silent auction only. And there's been a big change since March to where now a lot of the auction software platforms are offering like an all-in-one, stream your live video on our bidding page and it's sort of all there together.
Yep.
Do you...
Getting better. It's definitely getting better.
Right?
I appreciate what the platforms have done.
Yeah.
I still am kind of approaching it from a TV standpoint. It's hard to engage the heartstrings of the audience in your fund and need video when the picture is a third of your phone.
Right.
So while I appreciate the effort, I'm excited to see how we continue to progress. I think the thing to really think about is if you're going to go that way, you have to design for it. Right.
Like, I still think that it's not a barrier. I mean, almost everyone I know, like, will watch TV and be on their phone at the same time. So to me, the two-screen experience isn't a barrier. And I do like things on a larger screen, but I've had some clients where, like, that was a deal breaker for them. They wanted it. So it's like, great, cool, then we will do it in an all-in-one screen platform. But to your point, like...
Design for it.
Just make that decision early so that you can design. So is it... You mentioned earlier, we were talking about a potential client and saying, well, instead of having auction slideshows that it's like auctioneer and auction slides picture in picture, if you're right there and all the auction items are there, do you need a slideshow for the auction items? Because they're on the bidding platform.
Right, they're already on the bidding platform.
Yeah.
So I would really work through the process of what do you want to show on screen and really think about what the screen is. The screen is no longer just the broadcast screen.
Right.
It's now a combination of auction platform and broadcast screen. So it's taking that into consideration and saying, okay, well, yeah, maybe I don't need my live auction slideshow any longer because they're already on the auction platform.
Right.
So it's a whole lot more just auctioneer on screen or just executive director on screen or just development director on screen so that you can maximize those personalities in that particular given space.
Right. It's interesting too that something I think that it used to be not as much of a decision or sort of a different kind of decision-making process is the actual auction software. Because again, we were using these primarily for silent auctions, not for live auctions, not for fund and need. And use whatever, like there's lots of good stuff out there, lots of it works. But now we're having to think about, okay, if we're doing a live auction, what is my auctioneer seeing on the back end of the system? So, I mean, Greater Giving for years has been my like number one choice. There are a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is that my auctioneer can look at Greater Giving and see those bids real time. He or she is not having to like pull
Refresh.
reports and refresh and filter and all that. Like they just see it as it's happening. And that makes a huge difference when you're doing a live auction this way. They're also,
Especially here, I mean,
Yeah.
we tend to have the auctioneers here in our studio quite often.
Right.
I would imagine it's even more so when they're at their homes. At least here, we have multiple monitors set
Right.
up and infrastructure for the auctioneers to come in and use during their events. But they got to be able to access that
Right.
quickly. And most of the time, they're controlling it themselves.
right.
While they're on camera, while they're mic'd up, while
Right.
they're talking.
Right.
And
You don't want to have
so
someone
one,
clicking around and filtering and all that. Right.
it's
It's
just,
so
you've
bad.
seen so many where it's just like, okay, and the next bid is, I'm gonna get to it right now. And you definitely want to
Yeah.
have it right there for them, both infrastructure-wise, either at home, in a AV company studio,
Yeah.
and working with an auction platform that can give you that access.
Yeah, another thing that Greater Giving I think does really well that comes up for me a lot is that when we get to our fund to need or special appeal or paddle raise or whatever, they have a great thermometer, but a lot of times I'll have donors who have made their gift, they're going to pay by a donor advised fund or a check. And so they're not going to do it via credit card. And I want to be able to still enter in that gift and have it pop up on screen and, the total updates and all that. And again, I don't want to have to refresh anything. I want to be able to just tap it in, and it goes,
Yeah.
on. And Greater Giving is the only one I know of that will do that without like a lot of just back end, like workarounds, not having credit cards and stuff tied to it. And
It's hard because there's 3 different perspectives
Yeah.
that we're viewing all of this
Right.
as. We're viewing it as the audience's perspective, what they're seeing and how their user experience is.
Right.
We're doing it from the auction consultant, auctioneer standpoint.
Wizard
of really
behind the
trying-
curtain.
or what's behind the curtain. But then there's the tech side of things, the
Yeah.
other beside the curtain, where we're taking that data, however they're going to show it, and we're building it into the broadcast. For that, it's less important to us which platform it is, and yet at the same time, the prettier the fonts are, the colors and things like that, the easier it is for us to make it look even that much
Right.
better on screen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's just something that has definitely been a change, and that now I want to have a conversation with my auctioneer and say, like, this is the platform we're using and this is why, like, are you also comfortable with it?
Sure.
Like, it's just turned into a bigger conversation. It's just one of the new wrinkles.
Just another conversation on top of all the other
Of all the other
conversations.
conversations. Exactly. So moving on, I kind of want to talk about, I put this on my outline here, is what makes a virtual fundraiser successful. Which you could do a whole webinar series on
Money,
its own.
right?
Money.
Is it
yes,
money the answer?
Money. Big donors,
Big
deep
donors.
pockets. But from a production standpoint, I know, like, the way that we work together is that I typically come on as the show producer, right? And I'm doing a lot of helping with script writing and creating a show and wrangling media assets and all of that. And, whether it's me or someone else or whatever, like, someone has to fill that role.
It's been amazing, the events that we've worked together, just having that distribution of responsibilities, because somebody does need to do that role.
Yeah.
And we're so concentrated on making the pretty pictures for the broadcast and stuff like that. What we need
I like how
is,
you've reduced your role to that. We
That's
make
all
the
we
pretty
do.
pictures.
That's all we do. We don't even make them. We take other people's pretty pictures and make sure they ensure quality.
There you go. It's very good. But you're focused on that. And so having someone like having an event producer, whether it's me or someone else, like driving the bus a little bit,
So much starts with, and again, going back to everybody in there can repeat the spiel that I've been giving for 7 months, and it all starts with run of show. Like creating a run of show so that you know what it is you want to give to your audience, whether it's this personality or this video or these donors or these sponsors and this auction lots. Just creating that run of show, to me, is the baseline. Because once you have a run of show, it almost acts like its own checklist of what you need to do to get ready for your event. And then working with a producer has been great because you can help the client then really break that list down into actionable items.
Right.
And then assign due dates, which is even better.
I love a spreadsheet with due dates. Yeah. And I also like to, at some point, like storyboard out the events, right? I mean, sometimes we actually have meetings around it, or build and design meetings where we kind of walk through like, okay, and then we'll show this video and it'll be full screen, and then we'll go to this look. And do you want your logo in the top right corner or the bottom left corner? And like the sort of movement. And that's another place where it feels like things sometimes get identified that like, oh, nobody thought about.
In the build rehearsals.
Yeah, the build rehearsal.
Because if it gets all the way to rehearsals
And
and
it
we
hasn't
find
been
that
done,
out, then
yeah.
we're wasting rehearsal time.
Right.
So it's better to find those things out in a
Exactly.
build rehearsal,
Exactly.
which is kind of a pre-rehearsal
Sure.
for us, where we don't need auctioneers, executive directors, or all we need is decision makers on who wants to make the decisions as to what the broadcast is going to look like.
Right.
And so we can play with things like, did you give me that logo? Great. Where do you want it placed? And I think later on we're going to go into some
we're gonna do-
examples.
yeah, we'll
and
do
we can talk
examples.
about like how theming is still possible,
Right.
you know, even in virtual events. And I think it actually enhances broadcast.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. So one thing I do want to talk about and kind of get your, I mean, this is a production thing, but you're also a guy who's on boards and bids in some of my auctions, some of our auctions, you know, you're on the donor side as well. Like one of the things that I think people have lost focus a little bit, like some groups more than others, is that like, yes, it's a new medium. Like this is much more television production than it is event management, but all of the old school development principles still apply, right? You still have to cultivate your donors, like do all that donor stewardship, you know, work on those relationships.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think besides the back end of advancement where you're doing exactly what you were just talking about, donor relationships, cultivation, conversations,
Yeah.
pre-gifts. But so much of this is similar to live events, right? Everybody's like, oh, I've never done a virtual event before. I'm so scared. It's like,
But you've done events.
And that's exactly what I try to portray. Is just like, you know, we've done events before. Like, only the medium is different.
Right.
But the pre-production, there's a lot of similarities in the pre-production. It's not identical by any means.
Sure.
But
you still need a
to run
script.
show.
You still need a narrative
You still need
arc. Yeah, message.
You
all
still
of that.
need, if you're going to do a funded video, that video still needs to either be created or use an old one. And where in the show is it going to go?
Right.
Live auction slideshow. You know, you had one in the ballroom. If you need one on camera in order to help enhance and drive your live auction lots, or create reference between the large screen and the secondary device if you're doing them that way.
Right.
These are all things that we've done before. We're just going to present them a little bit differently. So I'm just trying to give confidence back to everybody because we got this.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, you know, about embracing the medium and streamlining and getting like focused on your message. Like you shouldn't be trying to recreate your in-person event online. Like it's about how do you create the best broadcast, you know, 1 hour broadcast we can create about your organization that keeps your mission, you know, in the forefront.
We can't recreate live events in this format.
Correct.
I mean, it's
just a
it's
different
not
animal.
that same feeling that you're gonna get. And my personal philosophy on it is like I don't want to try. I don't want to try to create your live event. What I want to try to do is figure out how do we best reach your audience.
Right.
And if that needs to be done through entertainment, it can be done through entertainment. If that needs to be done through, you know, auction lots that they're looking forward to, that they've been used to in the past, like it doesn't need to be this kind of recreation of the past. What it needs to be is the best TV show it can be.
Yeah. I'm gonna steal a line from a friend of mine who you might hear this in a webinar from us next week. But he likes to put it as that virtual events magnify the tendencies of your audience. Meaning if you have an audience or a crowd that comes to your event and the important thing about your event is the party, and like they're there because they want to see and be seen, you're going to have a different set of challenges in a virtual event versus an event where your crowd, like they're coming like 100% to support you and they're sort of all in for the support. Like those events I've seen Fund and Needs do as much as triple, in a night. And then we've had to, I'm going to be vague deliberately so I don't call anyone out, but like two different organizations, same kind of niche market, but like one event in person is very much like ego driven about people want to be seen bidding on certain types of auction lots. That event struggled versus a very similar event that does a lot of the groundwork of getting all their donors lined up and, pre-pledges and all of that. And they did amazing, so
it's been hard, I think, for some development offices making that transition. It kind of mental blocked, and that's why I think it goes back to that confidence thing. Like, no, we can do this. Just do your job that you know how to do, which really goes back to donor relations, cultivation, auction law. And let me worry about the technology. Let you worry about the technology because we've done this.
I mean, let us worry about the technology, but I've found that in this year, I've done a lot more consulting on marketing strategy, marketing strategy and auction strategy, and like, how do we talk to our donors, and like, what is I've done more coaching on presentation, speakers that are all of a sudden in front of a camera that usually, like, I would never work with a CEO that's going to go up to the podium and put their notes on the thing, and all of a sudden, like, I'm having to coach on all these other, elements.
Teleprompter.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a whole discussion on
a teleprompter.
Like, nobody's ever asked, well, not ever, but very rarely do we do teleprompters in our live nonprofit events. Corporate, again, going back to like corporate all the time. In our live nonprofit events, teleprompter, never. Now it's like, oh man, you've got a teleprompter. This is fantastic. And again, it goes back to that comfort. Right? It's like, now, great, now I can look right at the camera and have that conversation with the audience.
Yeah, I'm even just having conversations with people. I mean, it's just this last weekend, I was told by one of our presenters here, like, oh, you made us, you seem so confident and you're taking such good care of us. And it was me just literally standing in front of them and saying, it's okay when you see yourself on the monitor to like, take a breath before you speak. Like, you got this. Like, if you mess up, it's okay. People love you. Like, will be fine.
Take a breath before you speak is great feedback. I mean, you've done so much coaching, like you said earlier, that just wasn't in your job description before. But as a producer, I mean, it's been a different role for you this year as I mean, my staff have all had different roles this year as well. You've got,
and even from the beginning of the year to now, like from March to now, it feels like certain roles, have changed.
Again, constantly adapting, via technology changes, via our own, we have the 2 locations. So I like to have one team specifically in South San Francisco and one team specifically in Sonoma. So we've created redundancies for worst case scenarios as well.
We've had worst case scenarios.
We've had a couple that
we may save those for shots at the end. But
okay.
So let's, you want to do some show and tell? Start putting some
show and tell of some of our events from the year.
I'm going to shot before we
take a little sipper and see.
Yeah. So theme is important in an event, right? We've talked about it's TV production, like how do you make the best broadcast? Like, I am always surprised, even this far into the pandemic, like how many times I talk to a new client and that to them virtual event is like a Zoom meeting and everyone's going to be in their little boxes and that's what it is. And like, that's not at all what we do.
It's not what we do. I mean, we've seen other people
not knocking it, just not what we do.
And that's why it goes back to every organization has to make the decision that's best and easiest for them.
Right.
But what we're really trying to accomplish is that broadcast window, and I think that's why when we show some of these, that's really what's in the back of our head.
Great. So we're going to show some stuff. I'm going to say, if you're watching on YouTube and you have a question, I see some. If you have questions, throw them up there. We're not going to do like a formal Q&A session, but we will try to address some things. I see a couple of things already. Hybrid events we will get to. That's coming. That's in our what's coming next in 2021. But let's show some stuff. So I want to go back, like throw it all the way back to April 30th. Our
first event,
our first
April 30th.
live event together.
Yep.
Yeah, First Samaritan House. Can we have a look at? Oh, there she is. So this was it. I loved that we were able to do like some motion background. I thought they had a great Gatsby theme or like a Roaring Twenties kind of theme. I thought that really played to that.
I love they had a theme, you know, just made our first event kind of, it just gave us some direction because we turned it around pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, I think it was like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. Pretty quickly. So one thing I'll say when I look at this though, when I designed their auction slides, I had a lot of design around this, like the frame of the slide, that if I had to do again, like I wouldn't have done that way because I didn't need all that. It was over designed.
Yeah.
I thought I over designed the slide. So that was my first like, oh, I have to design
play it
differently.
again?
Yeah. Do you want to, can you play
Jared,
that
can
again?
you play that
Jared?
again for us so that everybody can kind of see what she, yeah.
See my over design in large scale. But that was,
I don't think it's too over designed, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if that slide was on its own on a screen in a ballroom, it would have been great.
Because you were trying to invoke theme that you didn't necessarily need to evoke because the window itself was
there.
doing it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, you know.
But this is what makes us better, right? Is we're constantly looking at these things, trying to figure out like, okay, great.
Right. So another event, it was not one of mine, but it was one of yours. It was in like early May, I think, but I've been obsessed with it all year long.
I know why.
Is the new wave, the new
show,
wave of
show
school,
why
show the bus.
She loves the bus.
I love the bus. It was so fun. Like they gave you a lot of creative assets to work with, right? Like they gave you all this stuff.
Entire deck of assets for us to work with. So, I mean, the event was originally going to be a live event, and this was the theme for it, which you can even see. It went from California Dreaming to California Streaming. Like they did a fantastic job, and we got all these assets as like little individual icons, and then we determined like how can we use those icons as part of the broadcast. And the bus was
so then the bus comes back during the auction. I love the bus.
One of the reoccurring themes in this particular event was the bus.
Yeah.
And using it for all the different timers. But this event also. We have the moving backgrounds again, which I know you talked about with Samaritan House, but you also really liked the fact that it changed colors. It wasn't just the same look the entire evening as well.
Yeah, there it goes. It goes to blue. So there was like a night to day thing, and it just gave, I think it's important in virtual events to keep things visually interesting so that it's not the same like talking head over and over, and just that little subtle color. There's the bus again with the total raised. I mean, just looks so good. Yeah, it was nice. This was the one, like I wasn't working on the show, but I was watching it, and I remember calling you like as soon as the broadcast was over. I'm like, you had to tell me, how did you do these things?
This was the one where you called us, and you're like, how did you do that live? And we're like, that was pre-recorded.
You
and so I love the fact that you didn't even know that that was pre-recorded, that you thought it was a live effect, and you're like, this is so great, we're gonna do all this stuff live all the time, and we're like, no.
Yeah.
Pre-recorded.
Yeah.
Like,
magic.
Definitely want to do pre-recording as much as possible.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's fewer variables to deal with when we've got it pre-recorded.
Yeah.
You know, for sure.
I mean, that's the one thing where I like it when the auctioneers are able to come into a studio because the internet service is so much more stable.
Right.
In our studio, it's if an auctioneer is here, the camera and the feed and everything is going right into the same as the broadcast is in. Where if we're doing everything virtually remote and the auctioneers at their house, executive directors at their house, we can make that work. But there's more variables, and so we need to work with the clients on, okay, what's it going to look like? What's it going to sound like? Making sure that they get a cord to plug into their network so that we're not on Wi-Fi. Every little variable that we can take out, we want to try to take out, just for consistency's sake, so we don't have those issues during the show.
Sure. But we've also produced events, from here in Sonoma for clients in Alaska, where having them come in the studio wasn't an option, and we did everything fully virtual, and it was fine. Alaska, Alabama,
Southern California.
Yeah. I've done events in Milwaukee and Oregon and Massachusetts. Like, you can do stuff fully virtual, but it is nice to have everyone in the studio.
We did one where the auctioneer was here, but the client was in Oregon.
Yes.
So all
Yes.
kinds of, yeah, exactly.
They're all a blur, but
kinds
yes.
of- yeah.
So let's take another look at an early one, which is the St. Joseph's Health Foundation. Their laughter is the best medicine. This is one of my favorites, again, for design. I taught myself how to do a neon effect in Adobe. I had their logo and made neon. They've always had a comedy club thing, like that's part
Theme.
of their
Yeah.
show, is that they have it's a comedy show, so we were able to incorporate that. And this is another one where we switched up the background because we had this brick wall theme through a lot of it that we put on the back of the Fund a Need thermometer, but then we needed to have a red curtain so it wasn't all like brick on brick. But when you go into the auction look, which should come up in a minute,
We were just using different iconography. We
Yeah.
had the neon, the red curtain, the
Right.
brick, just trying to take those elements and create, kind of enhance that theme.
right. It was a fun one though. I mean, the neon was fun, and this one was one that's interesting to me. We talked, yeah. There's the
There's the
auction look,
neon,
and you have
yeah.
the brick, but so they had jugglers.
They did.
They had juggling act. They had a 25-minute juggling act that came at the
This
end
is
of
a
their
perfect
event.
example. This particular one, and it's not going to show in the window here, but this is a perfect example of where you really need to know your audience.
Mm-hmm.
Because this particular event is normally a comedy show. They decided with the comedy format on camera, they weren't quite ready for that, so they went out and found a comedic jugglers, performing jugglers, and they were great. They were great.
They were great.
But
It was very well done.
they
It was
sent us a
25 minutes.
25-minute video of jugglers. And I was just like, there's no way people are going to stay on watching 25 minutes worth of jugglers.
Yeah.
But they knew their audience. And this is where I was like, this goes back to, hey, know your audience, because we did the live auction, we did the Fund a Need, we did all the videos, and then we're going to do the entertainment. And I don't think we lost a single person in
No.
that. There were the same number of people at the beginning of the 25-minute jugglers as there were at the end of the 25-minute
I was
jugglers.
so surprised.
And it was
was
just
good.
a perfect example of how, if you know your audience and you give your audience what they're looking for,
Right.
that engagement is still
there. Right.
It's just so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that one was also one that, I mean, they blew their record out of the water, or their goal out of the water too,
Yeah.
which is great. It was really nice. They did a good job. So another example of a recent event we did, if we can bring up West Coast Sports. This one, they're a youth sports organization. They had Charles Barkley as their sort of featured speaker. So again, just sort of being creative and playing on that theme. We've got the hardwood of the basketball, and we have our auctioneer on screen side by side with slides.
You like the countdown clock.
Yeah, I like the shot clock there.
Yeah.
He likes a countdown clock to close out auction items, and I like that we made it look like a shot clock.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
It was great. No, this was a great looking event, very clean, but themed appropriate.
Yep.
Happy client in the end on that one
Yeah,
too.
for sure. Another one of my favorites was Chanticleer. It's another recent one. And what I like about this, it's very subtle.
Very subtle.
Like, I like a motion background. Clients do not always like a motion background, but they had this whole travel theme, and we had this cloud thing happening. And if you look at the top, like, you can see that the clouds are actually moving. And I just like to have something with a little bit of texture, so that you're not just looking at like plain background on the screen. And I just thought it's just really nice. It was another one. We had a lot of elements to play with.
You played with the staff here a lot on that one.
I
You
did.
guys had a lot of fun on that one. It was a great client. They made amazing money that evening.
Yep. Yeah, they did.
And it's a national. I mean, you guys really had viewership.
Well, we had an
from
international audience. We had
international
900
audience,
and something people registered, and it was like 40 different countries like watching that one. It was I was having trouble keeping up with registration.
That's right. I remember that.
I mean, I was
do
importing
remember that.
registrations like right as we were going live. Like, it was crazy.
Do we want to talk a little bit about the success financially of some
Of
of these
events?
events and
Yeah, sure.
talking about kind of the idea of where live auction, fund and need, and just virtual events in general are going.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably speak more to that side of things as far as the live auction, fund and need, and total amount raised.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, there's just like all your different revenue buckets, right? And I feel like most people are getting to the same place that they did in the past. They're just getting there differently.
Sure.
So like sponsorships are holding really strong. People that want to sponsor will still sponsor. I think your sponsor benefits end up looking different, but one of the things that you can do now much easier is letting your higher level sponsors have video highlights.
I love incorporating sponsor videos
Yeah.
into either the pre-show or elements of the show if it seems appropriate, especially if it's themed and
Right.
you can like really like tie it all in together.
Yeah.
It just gives the sponsors an opportunity to have, I mean, we never let our sponsors on stage at most of these
We
events.
try not to,
They're
right?
thanked. They're thanked and they're tables
Right.
and
Right.
but giving them screen time.
Yeah.
And what's great is that screen time isn't just during the live event. So it isn't just for 1 hour.
Right.
But most of the organizations are leaving their show visible online for future donations as well. And so that sponsorship is still there.
Yeah,
for
I actually just
perpetuity.
looked at just when I was logging into my YouTube channel to get this set up, and one of the events that we streamed back in September, they usually would have had about 350 people in a ballroom, and their event it's like 1,200 views, which is like way more than you. So I'm hearing that feedback from sponsors that they feel like they're getting much more exposure. I've also, we've talked about our pre-show loop, so we typically will run 15, 30 minutes of content before the main program begins. And I've actually sold airtime in that pre-show loop the same way that I'll sell anything, the way that you would sell print
sell
space.
program,
Yeah,
right,
exactly. So sell the airtime, and that's been something that's worked. So sponsorship still holding really strong. Ticket revenue is largely going away because most people are making their events just like free to, attend or view.
Yep.
But one thing that has been really popular is people doing like meal deliveries or, wine deliveries or goodie boxes,
wine deliveries, yep.
and I've shipped wine and mezcal and, sleep masks and snacks and like all kinds of stuff literally all over this country. And people are super into that. So that's one way to kind of get some ticket revenue back.
Was there gift baskets with the pajama show?
They had sleep masks. Yeah, they
Sleep
had like
masks.
champagne and sleep masks and
Champagne
some
and sheet
like
masks. Yeah, exactly.
So great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a revenue point. So auctions are definitely working. I would say that live auctions or like larger ticket items are bringing in about 80% of what they would have at an in-person event because you just don't have the same momentum that you would if people are in the room. Like I'm seeing you, I'm bidding against you, But they are still working. And then your silent auctions, like those are doing.
Silent auctions are doing great.
Signs are great.
And fund and needs are doing great.
And fund and need, yeah. I mean, like I said, I've had clients do as much as triple in their fund and need. So I think overall, when you kind of put it all together, I'm still comfortable saying that most events are raising about 90% of what they would have in an in-person event. However, your net is get bigger in almost every case. Yeah, because you still have to spend money on a virtual event to make it look good. Like they're not free, but you're spending so much less because you're not having to rent a venue and do catering and floral and decor and
even if you
printing.
do catering, because I mean they need work too.
Right.
But
sure.
even if you do catering, those costs are different in this environment.
I mean, I've done floral where people could do or you could buy your steak dinner for two, and if you'd also like a floral arrangement, that's been part of the delivery. Yeah, so
I think there was an idea that we were floating around, and we've talked to other vendors about that is kind of like table in a box, tabletop in a box.
Yeah.
So it is floral, food, wine, just
photo booth props,
photo booth props.
I mean, I've plug in disco balls for an event that had like a dance party afterwards, or like photo booth props that then you have people take their photos and like send them to you, and then we put up a slideshow at the end of the thing.
Right.
So I think there's ways to get there. Like I think that they're working, and net revenue I feel like has been larger for almost every single event that I've done.
Completely agree.
Okay.
What other show and tell do we have?
Show and tell. So we have Tum Tum Tree, which was one that we got to do we had a live in the studio auctioneer, and we had a guest that came in remote, and we put the remote guest's face in the video wall.
In the video wall, so they could talk to each other
Yeah,
live on stage, even though they weren't both in the same place.
But like award show style, right? Everyone's doing like, here's our audience at home. And it was just a really cool, I think, to be able to pull up faces. There were supposed to be 2 vintners originally, but farming is a variable sort of lifestyle. So we ended up with 1 and we made it work.
We always make it work.
We always make it work. So Kaminar, this was one of yours. That's our
Kaminar was
next.
one of my favorites just because it was so pretty. And I don't mean, I mean, so many of the events that we do have a great
They're all
big
pretty.
design to it. But this particular event, I mean, so these guys are in studio.
Yep.
And it just, I don't know, it looks great. I love the chandeliers.
Love the lower
and
third
that's all,
there with the
that's all
piano
virtual,
graphic.
right? That's just
Yeah.
that's our LED wall.
Yeah.
That really could be anything, much like it is today behind us. But what I really also liked about this show, and I don't know if the clip is going to show it, is there was an entertainer as well.
Oh, great.
And the
Oh, yeah, you did like a concert at that
It was a
one,
whole
right?
concert. It very much had that kind of telethon feel to it, where the funded need was basically during the entire concert. And so during the concert, it would transition to like a little window of the donors that were coming in, and then go back full screen to the concert. And
Right.
I don't know, I really liked the difference of
Yeah.
it. It wasn't like everything else. It was incorporating the entertainment into the fundraising,
Right.
rather than having fundraising and then
And then some entertainment. Right.
It was just, again, I like to try different things and see how they work. And
No,
for
it's
us, for that
great.
one, it really worked great.
It's great. Next up, we have Huckleberry, where we were able to do some fun things with the video wall. Lots of fireworks
fun.
and
Yeah.
showing like big donor names.
Big donor names in the video wall, kind of really thanking
Yeah.
those people, showing them what's possible, showing how
Total
amount
raised at
total
the end.
raised at that particular moment.
I want
Uh,
fireworks.
You guys
I should have
you guys
asked you for
love
fireworks at the end of this show.
You should have had fireworks at the end of the show. Don't say that.
So another cool thing we did, and this is one thing I wish we could do more of, and it's sometimes just time and budget and whatever, is that, we typically run our pre-show loop and then we go, oh, and like now the show is open. Like I love when we can have some kind of like animated opening or like a logo reveal.
Oh, yeah.
So we did an event with Opera Parallel that there was a comic book sort of theme to something that they were presenting a graphic opera. So your team took their logo and created this very cool, like those are all images from the graphic opera that was presented later in the broadcast. And I just thought that
So this was
such
the
a cool-
opening of
So it was the
their
opening of
event.
the
And
event.
so it was just kind of like from the pre-show slides to this, and then to live broadcast from there. And it was just a nice way to, I mean, like the 20th Century Fox
Exactly.
logo.
Exactly.
It's like it's so empowering and familiar.
Right.
It was just a good way to start that, especially that particular event that was so theatrically based anyways.
So I want to start moving into some of the coming next things.
Okay.
So I feel like in recent weeks we've been doing a lot more playing around with green screens, especially here at the studio. So if we can bring up the Taste of Howell Mountain Fund a Need, that would be great. So we did this event here in Sonoma in front of a green screen, and we were able to take our Greater Giving thermometer and actually put our auctioneer into the thermometer, which I thought was super fun. It gave a very different look to that moment.
Or we will just
Or
take
talk
whatever
about it.
green
We'll
screen
take whatever clip you have next
we
in
have
there.
next
Throw
here.
something up, and we'll talk about it. But the green screen thing, like we've been able to create some different looks by putting our auctioneer in there. Oh, there it was. And then we also recently on this event, your guys figured out how to do a custom color on the Greater Giving thermometer. So. Because Greater Giving has like a certain palette, right? And they're like, oh, you can choose like one of these 15 or 20 colors. And you guys actually gave me a custom look, which I was a super fan of. But yeah, that's our auctioneer, like in the middle of the
Greater Giving thermometer.
Yeah.
And what's great is and are we going to play around this where he's like in varying places on this screen as well? So I mean, we can put him behind the wave, we can put him in front of the wave.
Well, we definitely played with that. Yeah, I mean, there was a moment where it was like, oh, he's sort of peeking out from behind the swoop, and that looks weird.
Yeah, exactly. He's like this weird omnipresent body kind of poking over the mountain.
There's a lot of very weird video files with different tests from that. But like, so if that's like the starter thing that we have been doing, something we haven't done yet is like continuing on the same theme, like how do we make things sort of different and great? Like we're going to show some tests that I think some of them you just saw for the first.
I haven't seen these yet.
Okay, you haven't seen these at all.
I barely saw them.
So this is the same greater giving thermometer, but like completely turned on its end, like wonky Alice in Wonderland style.
I think it just kind of shows that we could put it anywhere. I mean, I don't know that I would want it to be like that. But I think it just shows like what's possible.
But I mean, I've had clients that are like, oh, well, we don't want the names, we just want the amount raised, or we just want the thermometer, or we don't like the thermometer.
It just shows the customization.
And so the other one, so hold before you show it, Justin and Jared. But so one of the questions I get asked a lot is, well, how do we, or where do we, like we want to show images about our fund a need while the fund a need is happening. And if you've got like an auctioneer and you have a thermometer that you're trying to show, like, and you're trying to show
like
images,
where the donor
dollars are going to go
to.
Right. So like, how do you meld those together? So we're going to use our Star Wars friends as an example here. Again, a greater giving thermometer thing where.
So if you're raising money for major motion pictures,
yes,
this is how you might want to do it.
Yes. So we could still have our thermometer graphic. And just imagine instead of an epic lightsaber battle,
are really cute babies and kids.
Puppies and kittens.
Puppies and
those are puppies and kittens.
Right.
But again, like it's a very different look than, I haven't seen that.
I love it. I haven't seen that either. That's great. I knew we could do it, but I hadn't seen us do it yet. That's awesome.
Right.
Just because it does, I mean, again, if what we're about is trying to create the most engaging broadcast that we can create, that's just one example of how to turn something into something else.
Right.
And just all the possibilities that are involved in that.
And I think too, I mean, I don't know if this is how you operate, but it's how I operate. Like, throw me all of your ideas. Like, I don't care how crazy the idea is.
It's so hard to throw all of our ideas. I'd much rather you give me some kind of idea of what you're looking for.
Come to me with your crazy idea that you're like, I don't know if this could happen, and like maybe we can't do that, but we could do this. You know what I mean? Like,
we've done it,
exactly. Like, come with those ideas. So let's. We're getting close to the hour, so I want to move a little bit to like 2021.
Okay.
And hybrid events.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know about hybrid events. So what is how long do you think we're doing virtual? Do you think there's a point where things are hybrid? Like, when do you think that point is?
There's so many steps still to go because, I mean, here in California is going to be different than other places because every region is going to approach this differently. I think, hybrid events, it's going to be multiple levels of hybrid events. You're going to have the first level of hybrid events where you can maybe you can have your table. Normally you would host a table of, let's say, 8 people, and maybe they come to your house and you have a drive-in food service or pickup or tabletop in a box that then comes to that sponsor's house and everybody is together enjoying that meal, but it's still fairly virtual, just with elements of in-person by table. Then as we open up to 50-person events, I think that's going to happen. I think you're going to be able to have donor receptions with a live component to it that then is also being broadcast to everyone else. And so whether it's varying ticket prices or sponsorship levels, or I'm going to leave it up to the organizations.
Well, and I think you also have to think about what does the programming look like? Because if you've got 50 people in a room, you can't just set up a camera in the back of the room and like film what's happening in the room. Right, because if like you do welcome remarks and then you stop,
at home.
Right, like if you do welcome remarks and then you stop and let everyone have their salad course, like what's happening for the people at home. So I think you think about how you structure that.
I actually had that conversation already with a client because normally their event is opening speeches, thank yous, welcomes. Then there's dinner break, and then we get into keynote speaker, auction, fund and need. And what I was suggesting is, well, we could even pre-record all the welcome speeches during rehearsal.
Yeah.
And so they could even keep that same format for everybody live, but then the broadcast wouldn't necessarily see it that way.
Yeah.
While they're eating live, we would start to show
the stuff that
we pre-recorded,
oh, that's smart.
and then transition into the live at the appropriate time as well. So it takes a lot of organization,
right.
but you can give everybody the same program, even though to a certain percentage of your audience, it's spaced out differently.
Right. One of the challenges or factors to consider, though, is that you're now producing 2 events, right? Because you're producing the
hybrid
event
events
in person.
I think the idea of hybrid events is awesome. I think the execution of hybrid events is really going to be personalized by organization.
Yeah.
Because although everybody wants to be back in person, it's not going to be financially sustainable for everybody to jump back into live if you're also producing hybrid at the same time. The cost analysis is going to have to be on a client-by-client basis as to what's it going to cost to produce. Now, it's not double, right? You're not paying for 2 totally different events, but it's also more than just your live.
Right.
So it's going to be a balance there of, okay, what's the best way to spend the dollars for the return?
Right.
Some clients may stay virtual for a while.
Yeah.
Because they are making money and they are successful. But there's others,
I mean, I think some of that goes to like the guest experience too, right? Of like, I mean, I work on a lot of wine auctions. It's hard to do a virtual wine auction unless you're shipping a lot of wine in a lot of places. Like they're so wine tasting dependent that like maybe those events, there is a certain ticket level that you go in person and you're able to taste all the wine, but then there's the larger event that is, people are just watching at home the program and bidding on things, but they don't get the wine tasting. Like, I think that that whole guest experience, what's important to your audience, like, what do you need them to experience is going to factor into that.
What do you need them to experience? And what do you need them to experience to raise the dollars that you want? Because it's going to be a tough decision. Like, you may want to do things, you may want to have everybody there, but it may not make the most fiscal sense.
Sure. I feel like we've answered all the questions Kate has put to us. Do we want to close things out and tell a couple of our sort of... Like,
I mean, just kind of what I think you asked me. Go ahead.
Well, I had asked you, like, what's your most memorable event of the year, Tom Durante? And I think we both hate those, like, what's your favorite, what's your most, because, like, they're all my favorite, like, for a different reason. Yeah. And, like, I feel like the events that have been the most memorable, like the stories I'm going to enjoy telling the most are actually the ones where, like, it went wrong.
Right. Well, they're definitely the most memorable when something goes wrong.
I mean, we had an event where our auction software crashed on event day. And it was not the auction software. It was like a Microsoft server issue. Like,
server issues.
Lots of people were affected, but it like affected our auction software. And I was figuring out, like, do I need to phone bank like staff and kind of get the staff and how's it going to happen and whatever, and like called you and came up with this like crazy solution of, well, the organization can take donations in through their regular software and they're going to put it on a Google spreadsheet, and you guys made me like a thermometer pop up off a Google spreadsheet, and like I walked in here like at like 11, just freaked out about what was going to happen, and you just looked at me and you're like, no, we got it. What do you see?
Well, we were just able to use the technology to our advantage, and so it wasn't the perfect scenario, but it was a fix that nobody at home knew the difference.
Right.
And the organization
they still raise a lot of money. And so it's just, again, it goes back to just having that kind of cooler head and understanding of, okay, we're no longer in the perfect scenario. What can we do? And in that particular circumstance, what we could do was great. They already had a donation platform that wasn't their auction software. It was just their website donation platform. And we were able just to take names off of that and then actually put it into the broadcast.
which I thought was pretty cool.
And every client after he was asking me like, what happens when our auction software crashes? I'm like, well, let me tell you.
Plan B.
Been there.
Plan B happens.
So what's it? So there was one, and do you want to tell
Talk about the most memorable,
the most memorable event?
The most memorable, and you were saying what, I think the event that I'm most proud of is our ability to adapt, not just to this environment, but to the chaos of this environment. We had 100 and something degree day in Sonoma, and Comcast had an outage, and we were 45 minutes from 30 minutes from showtime. We were here in our studio in Sonoma, and we no longer had internet. And
we had rehearsed the show. We had the executive director was here. The auctioneer was here.
We had the internet up until that 30 minutes before the show mark. Then all of a sudden, and so we were up and running in a different location 45 minutes later. I think we started the show.
We started 30 minutes late.
Started 30 minutes. We told everybody, like, hey, everybody, we're going to start the show at 6:30 tonight. And we picked up all the cameras and all the
literally,
equipment.
I remember having a conversation. Like, I was just like...
You didn't even know what was going on. Like, we're like loading stuff into a van.
There was a point where it was like, wait... We're moving, we're moving, right? We're moving.
So we just picked
and
up.
Everyone just like started picking up gear and like putting it into whatever car, because it was like a van, like your car, like my car, just like put it in there, drive down the street. We left and forgot to tell the auctioneer where we were going because we were in such a hurry.
We had done other events where we weren't necessarily in our studio, so we knew what it would take to do an offsite event. So we immediately went into that. Great, we're now doing an offsite event, only it's in 30 minutes. So we picked up everything, we moved down the street. Luckily the client was down the street and they had a different internet service, and it didn't look like what it was originally going to look like. But the event happened, and I mean, my amazing staff, yourself, the auctioneer, the client, I mean, everybody just performed. It was awesome.
It was awesome.
Just that
it was
that
definitely
level
guerrilla
of
event broadcasting.
But it got done, and everybody made their dollars, and everybody was happy, and it was just it's the most memorable for multiple reasons. Obviously because of the chaos of it, but also what we were able to accomplish in the end.
Yeah, I agree. Any final words?
Anything else? We're just reading the screen a little bit.
Well, he's reading. I can't read on that monitor. But
no, I mean, I thank you for being here. I thank everybody for joining us today. I think we're super proud of the work that we've done so far. We can't wait to see what 2021. Some people are like, oh, 2020. We're just gonna keep rolling with it, and it's part of the fun. Is it ideal? Nope. Not at all. I mean, there's a lot of things I'd like to be doing differently right now, but I'm super happy for the clients that we've had, and the ability to stay open and make, amazing events just look a little bit differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys are like family to me now, so it's
Thank you.
Really appreciative of all the work we've done together. And like I said, all my clients are nonprofits. Like, they couldn't stop fundraising. So it's really great to be able to...
Fundraising is so important right now.
It's so important right now.
We need our nonprofits to make money, to help. There's a lot of people out there who need a lot of help.
And it's great to see them really responding and, and doing this.
Absolutely.
So let's toast. Let's toast.
To 2021.
All right. 2021. All right.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks everybody.
So much.
Have a great evening.